Harness the field of potential that arises when you take personal responsibility and become the divine creator in your own life.
Visit theway-healing.com for more information.
Hey, everybody. Oh, my goodness. We have got talk radio for all of it.
Really, thank you for blazing the trail for women in talk radio and just being such an inspiration to me and so many other people. What you're doing is so awesome. And, you know, without people like you there to like really step out of the box and go for it, I don't know if someone like me would have ever ended up here, but I'm so happy to be.
Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. Join me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, for real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and masculine, you learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
Together, working at a practical level, you learn to trust that everything that is happening is for you, your growth, and ultimate freedom.
Our circumstances don't matter. It's only how we relate to them that does.
Get ready to befriend the wisdom of your body and the power of your mind.
Break Free and Trust starts now.
And welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jacqueline.
I'm going to start off today's show with that quote from Michael Singer, who is the author of The Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment. There's nothing more important to true growth than realizing that you are not the voice of the mind. You are the one who hears it. So Jacqueline and I have and continue to have powerful experience with intuition. It has brought up the question, how do you differentiate between the voice of your own intuition from the thousands of other voices that are competing for your attention? Singer suggests you're not the voice of your mind, but you're the one who hears it. Intuition, we think, is learning to recognize that one true voice beneath the noise of fear, conditioning, programming, and conventional wisdom. But there's much more to this. Once you can hear the voice clearly, you're no longer being asked only to follow it. You're being asked to become it or to be it. So what is intuition really? And how is it different from a feeling or a fear or a wish? Can intuition be trained, or is it something we simply uncover? And what does it mean to stop being the sheep and become the shepherd? All this and more in the next hour. And of course, for live viewers, this show is open to questions in the second half. So put them in the chat or call in at 1-800-930-2819. And I'm going to kick it off with a question for you. So Jacqueline, when you hear Singer say, you are not the voice of the mind, but the one who hears it, what does that stir in you?
I can tell you that as soon as you asked the question, something in my body just sort of settled, like from a purely feeling standpoint, sensation standpoint. My energy kind of dropped from up here in my chest to lower in my belly. And I had a profound sense of calm, actually, which kind of surprises me.
What's behind that? Question before the question, I suppose.
It's an interesting question to which I don't know that I have an answer. Well, I think the voice of intuition, as I have come to understand it for myself, sits in a place of neutrality. It sits in a place that's untouched by our life experience and the dramas and traumas and stories and beliefs and everything that drive most of our behavior. And it actually comes from a place that's different than that. And what's coming up now as I'm answering your question is a visual that I've seen many times, but I just saw recently in some coursework that I'm doing of the iceberg. So I'll speak from that place. The piece of icebergs that we see are often likened to our consciousness. And what I mean by that is, or our conscious minds, 5% of the iceberg actually pokes up out of the water. 95% of the iceberg is hidden from view, which really speaks to our unconscious mind. So on this show, we've spoken a lot about programming and limiting belief systems and patterns that we have had since we were really quite young. And for those of you that believe in patterns that happen before birth or even past lives that exist, that have the potential to exist then. And our unconscious mind drives so much of what we do. Our conscious mind has a part to play in that. But this other place in us exists. This place of witness consciousness that we speak to, or observer. Some call it the subconscious, some call it the superconscious. And it's this place where we're witnessing everything that's happening without being touched by it, without being hurt by it, without being affected by it. And that's the place that I believe intuition sits. And so when you ask the question and my body gets calm and quiet, what it also does is it sort of, for those of you watching, you can see my hand moving towards center. It brings us back into alignment with our true self. And it lands as just this knowing. And it's a knowing, it sounds to me, or I don't know if you can even say it sounds when you say, I hear this still, quiet voice. I don't know that I actually hear or I feel like I'm hearing, but it sounds like a very still, quiet voice that starts off as a whisper. And it's a voice that speaks very clearly and cleanly, often says things that my conscious brain thinks are crazy. But it's like having this wise sage that sits inside of you that's speaking for you in the midst of all the other noise that's going on, amidst the unconscious and the conscious. And it speaks what feels like wisdom. Does that answer your question?
It does. And, you said something at the start of that, which I thought was really interesting. It's this, it transcends experience.
Yeah.
It's not a product of your experience, which is certainly what your ego is. But I wonder, it's like, I relate to much of you said, but I think for me anyways, I see it slightly differently. There's this very conscious thoughts we're aware of, the ones we're from these decisions we make. There's the subconscious, which is probably generated from our childhood and early experiences or limiting beliefs and fears that are probably driving a lot of the bus. But then there's something else, which I think I probably more tap into intuition, is universal consciousness. The thing that's attached to everything and everything, forwards and backwards throughout time. It's timeless. It's just all information. And I've always felt or believed that my intuition resides from that place.
I don't know that we're actually disagreeing with each other. I actually think that there's agreement, except for the fact that I don't know that I would call what sits under the iceberg subconscious. I think I would call it unconscious. But that creative intelligence or that pure intelligence that you're speaking to, if I'm to relate to it in the way that I just shared, I would say to me that intelligence is soul intelligence.
Yeah.
And soul intelligence is where we are all connected. There is no separation. We're sort of tapping into the quantum field, right?
Right.
So do we see things the same way? Or?
I think we do.
Okay.
I think we do, because I just wanted to make that differentiation, because it's like this idea of, I think in intuition, whether it shows up as a voice or a knowing or something like that. It's like, oh, that's not something that's coming from a thought that's in my periphery vision. It's coming from elsewhere. Oh, it must be my intuition. But it could also be fear. It could also be something from trauma, or it could be something from our unknown programming as well. So how do we differentiate between those two things?
I was just going to ask you the question.
Yeah.
So when I speak to you about intuition, what happens in your body or in your awareness?
When you speak about it.
If I speak the word intuition, or I repeat Michael Singer's quote that says, there's nothing more important to true growth than realizing that you are not the voice of the mind. you are the one that hears it. What happens in your body? That's probably not the right question
It's
for
not the
you.
right question for me.
What happens in your awareness?
In my awareness is I go, that's truth, because I've had the experience of a growing intuition, particularly in the last decade. And so I've gone from a place where it didn't feel like I understood what intuition was, nor was willing to trust that, to, oh, this is the voice, or this is the knowing that I'm meant to follow, and I'm actually meant to get out of my own way and follow this particular voice. So in a sense, yeah, now that I'm saying that out loud, I can feel my body settling into this. Yes, this is, we're in truth.
Your body's talking to
Yeah,
you?
a little bit, tiny, a little bit.
Just a little.
Yeah,
It's okay.
yeah.
That's a step.
I'm trying.
Don't try. You do you. But so how do you know when your intuition is speaking versus all those other voices?
By the content of it.
Say more.
Yeah.
That's curious.
By the content of it. There's this, the content of my own voice is predominantly, for me, it's driven by my self-will. And I got some pretty good tests for what my self-will are, by a content of a voice that's driven by a higher calling. And I'm going to call that God's will, right? And I can do this as it comes up, I can do a simple test. Is this self-will or is this God's will? I mean, what's it driving me to do? And I'd go further, because we're going to jump ahead here in a sense, and how do we develop our intuition? But I'll start that conversation here a little bit. Is the only way I've come to trust my intuition, or facilitate or foster intuition, is knowing what my intuition isn't. I'm much more aware of that. And then what's left becomes my intuition. And I don't always get it right. And sometimes this is intuition. And after the fact, you realize that was not intuition. Right?
We've had some of those conversations.
Yeah. But the more I practice that, the more I practice inquiring into, what's this that's coming up? Where is it coming from? Is this coming from my known fears? Is it coming from my knowing limiting beliefs? No, it's something else. And I don't recall thinking it. That's intuition. I'm gonna sort of take a bet and follow this thing now, even though it's my thinking mind is rejecting it, or it's taking me to a place that I wouldn't have thought of, or wouldn't have been natural to me. That's the voice I more and more try to follow.
So I have a question that's coming up, which is, are intuition and gut instinct the same thing?
I think they can be, but they don't have to be. I think just like anything, I think there's this hodgepodge of stuff that comes from under, as you said, under the surface of the iceberg. That's the shadow side of us, our programming, conditioning we don't fully understand, the traumas we haven't resolved. That is also mixed in with the intuition. It comes up from the depths, and until we can differentiate what it is, I think it can feel like, oh, that's a gut feeling. Mm-hmm. I'm having an emotional response to this. That therefore it's something below the surface, but I don't know what it is yet until I look at it.
Yeah, the question came up for me as I was listening to you speak, and I think in the past I might have said that yes, gut instinct and intuition are very much aligned, but I think often our gut instincts are emotionally driven, and they're emotionally driven from past experiences and our memories. And sometimes they are intuition speaking. So how do you work with what you call intuition? You asked the question in our intro of, can it be trained, or is it just something that's there or not? What do you think the answer to that one is?
Well, so there's two questions there, and I'll start with the second one. I think it's always there. Our intuition is not something that we have to develop. It's something we have to learn to listen to. I think of it in terms of, it's a radio station, and what we are is we're receivers and transmitters, but mostly receivers. And we have our station tuned to something, and that something is often our egoic thinking mind and our subconscious. This is the music we're dancing to in the thoughts. these thoughts we're listening to. And to intuition is just broadcasting all the time, but we don't know how to listen to it. And so it can be trained in the sense that it's training ourselves to try to listen for that other sound, to try to change our dial to pick up that as well as this, or maybe if possible, turn the dial so now we're picking up the broadcast of our intuition, not the broadcast of our trained thinking mind and our subconscious programming.
What are ways in which you've worked to train your intuition or to train your mind to hear that radio station?
You know, the first step is to understand, again, what's the music that's being, what's the sound that's being broadcast from my thinking mind? As Singer says, can I stop and observe my thoughts? Where are these thoughts coming from? And then beginning to recognize, oh, I'm thinking the same 70,000, 90,000 thoughts every day. I'm on a loop about this identity I have, the fears I have, the things I have. And the more I start seeing where they're coming from, I'm recognizing it's coming from this well of my own experience, of my own fears, of my own belief systems. And learning more to let those go and observe them and pay attention to this is not the information I want to listen to. And within that, starting to see thoughts arise thoughts or feelings arise that are not those, and paying more attention to those over time. And I'm going to throw in a big part of this too. It's a complicated question, so I'm having trouble answering it.
I think you're doing a great job,
yeah,
actually.
One of the mainstays in it, in my own experience, and this is very early on in my journey of first of all, even recognizing that there is intuition and realizing, oh, that's what I want to listen to. I was in this place, Miraval, which I brought up many times before, and one of the practitioners there who had done some work on me saw me walking around the grounds a little later on, and I had my headphones on. I was listening to like some electronic dance music or something like that, and he pulled me aside and just said, "Man, when you were in here yesterday, you're struggling. You have to be aware that what you put in your head is profoundly influential on all your thought systems and everything else. It's like, I have a prescription for you, and it's for you to get off social media, stop watching news, stop watching movies on Netflix, and only listen to spiritual music. Try that for a year and see what happens." And I'll tell you, and I did that, and all my thoughts began to change. Once I removed the bombardment of the propaganda, the societal conditioning, the stuff I was putting in my head, the profile of my thoughts began to change as part of that.
It's interesting. We just spent the last 5 days on Bowen Island doing some facilitation of a retreat. And I really noticed we're sitting in nature. And in many ways, we chose not to access a lot of noise. So no television, no movies, no whatever. And it was amazing when I drove back into the city last night and I saw like billboards and other things. I was really struck by the difference in consciousness that was showing up being immersed in nature, or as forest bathing, as they say, versus being in the busyness of the real world, in quotations, and what that actually did to my nervous system. So I get it. In my experience, intuition is only really accessible when the nervous system is calm. Our nervous systems, our brains, really, in many ways, we put a lot of energy and talking into our prefrontal cortex and the place of reasoning and rational thinking. And yet much of our brain is really focused more on that unconscious place that we're speaking to, that sits under the iceberg. And if our brain in any way is put into its sympathetic state or a stress response, our capacity to be able to listen to anything beyond our survival diminishes tremendously. And so much of the work that we do, and I'll speak about I do more specifically, is really in working to train the nervous system into a place of relaxation, often by creating enough hermetic stress or just enough stress that creates that bounce back of relaxation in order to then be able to hear what exists beyond survival mode. Most of us, without even being conscious of it, are walking around in survival mode all the time. And so from that place, we don't actually even have access to that voice of intuition.
When you're in fight or flight, you can't hear that station, right?
No.
In that term.
There's too much noise.
Yeah. And it's actually, and you put it beautifully. I mean, that's actually part of a part of our human condition. I mean, that's if we're in fight or flight, if there's danger, we don't want to be accessing intuition at that point in time. We want to be evaluating the environment, getting tunnel vision, and finding a way to escape it. Our intuition is not helpful then. Yeah. So it's a great feature of being human that's been hijacked a little bit here.
Totally. Yeah. Something else is coming to mind, which I find curious. I've never thought about this before, but in our training from the yogic scriptures, what we've learned is that we have three minds. And one is the negative mind. And the negative mind isn't negative. It's actually really important. And the negative mind is that place of moving toward things that promote survival and saying no to things that are dangerous. It keeps us safe. The positive mind is all about saying yes, and it's expansiveness and possibility, but out of whack, it also creates lots of trouble. The neutral mind is that mind that can hear those thoughts coming from both sides and actually operate along the middle path that Taoists talk a lot about. And what came to me as we were talking is that middle, they use the word middle path, right? And intuition, as it's understood in many different energetic systems, is the third eye. And the third eye sits right in the middle. Mm-hmm. And much of intuition actually sits right there. Right? When we're not being pulled towards scarcity or safety, and we're not being pulled towards the direction of pure expansiveness, but we're actually meeting somewhere in the middle, that voice all of a sudden comes online, or that radio station.
We can hear it. We can tune in. Yeah. I mean, the third eye, it's like the all-seeing eye, that seat of intuition.
Yeah. So, we were talking, I can't remember what we were saying on our last podcast where I said that's something that I've been with since I was a little girl. Do you remember what it was?
I don't.
Okay. I definitely have a very active, negative, and positive mind. And I do not operate from my intuition 24/7. I don't know that any of us living in this world can operate 24/7 from our intuition because there's noise that pulls us in different directions. But I definitely know that practices like Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, breath work, meditation, martial arts, they all bring us into a place that actually centers us and roots us so that when life comes to knock us down or the wind changes, we don't actually get knocked over or break, but we learn how to pivot, right? And so we can stay in that center place. And in my experience, that voice that we're speaking of has come forward a number of times. I can think of specific circumstances in my life where my intuition spoke, and it spoke in ways that didn't make any sense to my thinking mind. And I was compelled to listen. And then I can think of a number of times in my life where that intuition spoke and my thinking mind took over. Mm-hmm. and I didn't listen. And I entered periods of deep chaos. Is that true for you?
Well, definitely true. In fact, I mean, my experience of my thinking mind taking over, I'll call it self will run riot. It took me, into the depths of addiction and basically, running my own life into the ground, just following that thinking mind, following that path. And a big part of recovering from that or coming out of that place is learning how to let go of that thinking mind, because clearly from that place it doesn't serve. That thinking mind was just bent on destruction and making wrong decisions at that time. But what else could I rely on? Well, I have access, if I'm willing, there's access to a deeper pool of knowledge called my intuition. And so I was almost forced to let go of that thinking mind and then start trusting intuition, thoughts from my higher self. And in fact, because it was such an extreme experience for me, is that I'm very much trained now, coming out of that, to like discount the first thought I have almost always. Like if something happens, the first thought that comes up is like, not that one, because that's going to be the wrong one. I know it's going to be the wrong one. I just don't know how. And if I can push that thought aside and move into a place of quiet and response, the next thing that emerges is likely from my intuition. So very much like it doesn't go, it's not like I'm sitting there accessing intuition all the time. It takes work, and it takes practice and calming, as you said, calming my central nervous system, clearing my mind, recognizing that thought that came up, it's not really my own. It's just something it's like the music that's been playing my whole life. Let that one go, see what the next one that shows up is. And that's the one that is more likely to guide me than the first one.
You're making me think a little bit about why you and I have both in different ways found real physical practices, whether it be running or yoga or breath work or like any kind of exercise, is in order to allow the space for intuition to flourish, we first need to let go of the garbage. And so when you're speaking, what I hear is like, I'm creating space for my reactivity to show up. I'm creating space for my program thinking to show up, but I'm not giving any credibility to it or attaching to it in any way, because I know that once that clears, once those clouds clear from the sky, that I will then have access to truth. And I've learned, I'm speaking as if I'm you. Yeah. I've learned how to pause and take the time to be able to actually get to a place where that voice can speak.
Yeah. And that pause, as you said earlier, it's come about, I mean, it's not, that pause didn't come about necessarily from mental exercise, though it's part of it. It came from a tremendous amount of somatic work as also a basis for that. Lots of yogic practices, lots of meditation, lots of breath work, lots of prayer and contemplation is all sort of a daily practice or a way of life to create the calmness within my body that then translates into the calmness of my mind, that creates the ability to not jump on the thoughts that show up immediately that want to put us into action, because I'm coming from a place of relative calmness, from where I used to be. And in that calmness, we don't have to react.
So what I hear in that is that when you have the ability to be with things that might otherwise cause reactivity and allow them to pass rather than respond from the reactive mind, you have access to a much deeper well.
Yeah, when things go right. That's right.
Fair.
Yeah, fair.
Should we take a break
Yeah,
and then come back?
Yeah.
Okay. Tune in to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living with me, Jacqueline.
And me, Chris, on Transformation Talk Radio, every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and to heal, and how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Witness the field of potential that arises when you take personal responsibility and become the divine creator in your own life.
Visit theway-healing.com for more information.
Hey, everybody. Oh, my goodness. We have got talk radio for all of it.
Really, thank you for blazing the trail for women in talk radio and just being such an inspiration to me and so many other people. What you're doing is so awesome. And, you know, without people like you there to like really step out of the box and go for it, I don't know if someone like me would have ever ended up here, but I'm so happy to be here. And yeah, I just want to thank you for everything you're doing. You're one of my major inspirations.
What if your training isn't enough? The Multicultural Mindset Podcast invites counselors and therapists to unlearn the one-size-fits-all approach. This isn't cultural competence. It's a way of being that brings racialized experiences from the margins to the very center of care. Let's stop pathologizing Black pain and start challenging the system that created the bias in the first place. Visit newseasons.training to subscribe.
Living a life by design. It's the journey back to you and living 365 days of purpose with host Esther Graham. Tune in every second and fourth Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Discover that what is possible is already in you. God designed a phenomenal life for you. At Living a Life by Design, Esther helps you ignite the energy behind your personal journey. For more information, visit fddwomen.com.
Let your dreams and not your doubts drive your decisions. Often, like 99.9% of the time, it will require you to stretch yourself into unknown territory. But that, my friend, is how you grow. You are making decisions all day long. Decisions about what to eat, what to wear, who to call. Decisions about how to spend your time and who to spend it with. Or how to spend your money and what to spend it on. If just for today, you stopped before every decision and checked in with yourself and let your dream.
And we are back. It's funny, in the break, we remind ourselves why we even had this episode of intuition. It was stories that were coming up our own life that led to this, and thought maybe we'd start by sharing those with you right now. And the first one I want to share, because it relates to Jacqueline's story, is one of the first times I really trusted intuition, and it just showed up in this miraculous way. I was about 7 years ago, as I was going through my struggles with addiction and mental health, and I was not an intuition-driven person at all in this time. My central nervous system was a wreck, and I was very much driven by self-will and make stuff happen. Right? No intuition. That's woo-woo stuff. That was the old me, but things were getting pretty bleak in my life. And so I'd gone away to this wellness place called Mirabel, which I just mentioned earlier, and had seen a bunch of practitioners. And one of my last meetings was with a psychic there, and Kundalini teacher named Tajpal, who basically told me I was standing on a pile of dynamite. It was going to go off. There was nothing I could do about it. I was about to go through a really tough time. And lose a whole bunch of stuff, but everything was going to be okay, she said with a pause, as long as I did Kundalini yoga. Okay, I was 49 years old. I had never done yoga before. And so I'd never even heard of Kundalini yoga. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know what came over me in that time. It's like, I don't really have any choices left. I can feel my predicament. Something deep inside me was telling you must listen to this woman. I mean, you don't have any choice, but there's something was so powerful in me. I said, I have to listen to this woman. And I wasn't really good at listening to anybody at that stage. This for me was a really profound intuition taking over. I came back to Vancouver where we lived, looked up Kundalini yoga, and I went to my very first yoga class, which is this Kundalini yoga class. And if you've never done it before, it's like chanting, it's like people with turbans on, like there's all sorts of weird stuff going on. So I said, you know what, I'm here, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do this thing. And I had this massive emotional release within this class, like nothing I'd ever experienced before. Like something that's been in me for 49 years got started to get released for the first time. And the teacher came up to me at the end of the class, said, "Listen, I can see you're struggling with something clearly. You're going through had a powerful release. And out of coincidence, the teacher's training for this particular discipline starts tomorrow." She had no idea that I'd never done yoga before, just saw that this could be helpful. And here I am. I've been sent here by a French psychic from Arizona. Teacher's training starts tomorrow. My intuition told me you have to say yes to this. Every bit of logic said say no to this. This is ridiculous. You've just done one yoga class in your life. How would you possibly do a 300-hour teacher training class over 8 months? But I said yes. And it turns out that teacher was actually Jacqueline, and that's come up in previous podcasts. And no, we did not fall in love that day. It was much later, but that was the first time real experience for me with intuition and following that voice or that music that I had never listened to. And I think it's really true. Kundalini yoga and that practice that I did religiously for a year and a half, 2 years, it literally saved my life. It saved my mind. It brought me back. And without that, the life I have now wouldn't exist. That was a huge check mark for intuition and made me want to like facilitate like, hey, how do I get on this radio station a little more frequently? Because it seems to be playing a song that's actually, adding value to my life. So that's my story of intuition. I know yours relates to it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could share so many different stories. And I'll come to that one in just a second. But I'll share a different one first, which is that, the way that my intuition has shown up in many moments has been from a career standpoint, or as a student also, but always through education, and which will come back to what Chris is asking me. And what's happened often for me is I've taken many different roads and traveled many different pathways. And oftentimes it was at the height of what I was doing. Once I had built something really beautiful, I would hear this voice that would say, "It's done." Or my heart, which is where I feel a lot of this, would start to close, and I would say, "Oh, it's done." And I would almost immediately leave a job, end a practice, do something that would just shift. And on the outside, I don't think it made any sense, because why would you do that? You've reached the height of what you were looking for. You got to where you wanted to be. But there was something in me that was like, you did, you got there. And now it's time to move in another direction and go somewhere else. And recently, I had a really beautiful experience. I haven't had a moment like that in a while. And I went home for home being Montreal, for a family event. And during that event, I ran into a really old friend of my sister's. And I sat with her for a little while talking about all kinds of different things. And there was something about her energy. Maybe that sounds woo-woo, but we all know what it feels like when we sit with somebody who feels like they're sitting in their majesty, or
they have a presence, right? We feel it.
Yeah, thank you. That's better word. That's actually better language. What it feels like when you're sitting with somebody whose presence just there's something palpable. There's something palpable about it that brings you into a place in yourself. Or they're the people that you look at when you're walking down the street, or you're sitting in a room with, and you're like, I want what they have, that kind of feeling. And her energy was so clean and clear. And she started sharing with me about a form of work that she had sort of moved into. And it really struck me. And normally it would strike me, and then I would just go about my day. But that evening, I was really curious. And so I went onto my computer and I started looking up what she was talking about. And then I signed up for a workshop and then I signed up for a class and I got really curious. Anyways, I can sometimes be impulsive and jump into things too quickly. And I know that about myself. And I also kind of love that about myself.
Yeah, lots of yellow belts. Eh?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes only white ones. But this was something different. And my mind was saying, you just finished almost a year's worth of training in another form of work. Just give your time to that. If this is for you, it'll come around again. Just wait. And I remember feeling like that actually when you came back into my life a year and a half before our first meeting. And I had just done a bunch of dating and was like, I'm done. I'm good being single. I love my kids. I love my life. I'm done. And then you showed up really quite like the next day after I had made a declaration that I was finished. And not only did you show up, but you showed up with a crazy story that would make anybody go running in the other direction.
Yeah.
No holds bar, everything shared. And something inside of me was like, yes, that's it. Yes, that's it. Well, in this moment, I set up a call with this woman around this work. And we're having a conversation and she's getting me really excited. And it's a real heart to heart, honest conversation. And I said to her, okay, if I choose to do this, what do I need to do? And she says something like, I don't really know your story and I don't want to put any pressure on you, but there's a training that starts tomorrow. And all of the hairs on my arm stood up, which brought me right back to that moment Chris was talking about. And I started to laugh and I was like, well, those words put me in a place where I have no choice but to say yes. And I've started this training. And as I've started this training, all of a sudden there's clients that are stepping into my world who are asking for exactly what the training has to offer. And this is my experience of intuition. When we listen, even when the mind says no, and the mind often says no because it's overwhelmed. It wants to protect us. It doesn't see possibility. But when we listen anyways, what happens is, I think about the seas parting. The world opens up all of a sudden, and it's like every possibility, every synchronicity that is needed in order to make this work in your life just starts to open. And you know then that you're on the right path. And then you just start, as Michael Singer would say, you just say yes. You just start saying yes, because the universe, as I understand it, longs for us to fulfill our soul's purpose. And as long as we can get out of the way, it'll work in such a way to make that flow quite easily. The only thing that creates suffering for us in that process is our resistance to it.
Yeah, and that's beautifully said. And like this, the yes versus the no. The ego at its heart, our mind, the thinking mind, the one we're conscious of, it's a survival-based program. And it survives by making tomorrow look a whole lot like today because we made it today. Or maybe say it this way, it makes tomorrow look like yesterday because we survived it. And so it's lots of no's. It's like, here are all the things you don't want to do because that would be a change. That's the unknown. And it has nothing to do with, whatever we're here for, whatever plan the universe has for it, which is begging us to say, I'm keep giving you the signals of what you're supposed to do. And you're just supposed to say yes to this thing. And if you say yes to it, you're going to have this unbelievable life with unlimited potential. You're going to tap into your creativity. You're going to go move to this place of peace and joy, but you just keep saying no to it because it's all out of fear. And it's this, that's why there's such a, I mean, this is no small thing. There's such a benefit to tapping into our intuition and leaving our fear-based egoic thinking mind off to the side to do what it's good at, figuring out which car to buy, figuring out which is cheaper, and like doing comparisons and things like that, but not making life decisions. Those big decisions about to create our happiness and our joy and calm, they come from our intuition, or some people from the heart, which a lot of people relate to the intuition. And so, the critical skill to master, as we're sort of zoning in on this, is how do we differentiate between, what's the intuition versus what are our fears, what are our untapped emotions, what are the false voices. So I'm going to ask you that because it's a really easy question.
Yeah, it's so easy. I just have to, I'm struck often by your speaking, because so often things that I learn or study through like intentional effort, you have learned through personal experience, and you speak them so clearly that it's almost like I could have just given you 2 chapters of a book that I just finished reading. And you just summarized that, not from having read it, but from really having lived it.
It's what happened.
Yeah.
Right.
But I just want to honor that because
Thank
I
you.
think it's a big deal. Yeah. In my experience, what intuition isn't is drama. Intuition isn't gossip. Intuition isn't a fulfillment of old patterns and old stories and old beliefs around our worth, around our value, around scarcity, around a lack of safety. Intuition is clean. It's clear, and it's not loud.
Yeah. I'm just going to, and you're not going to hear it on the television. You're not going to hear it in the radio, unless it's your intuition radio station, and you're not going to read it in the news or hear it in social media. That's not your intuition.
I'd actually go so far as to say that on some level, all of those forms of media that Chris is talking about are actually designed with the intention of distracting you.
Intentionally.
Yeah. From your intuition.
Yes.
And I would say that that's true from the dawn of time.
Yes.
And now I can't believe I'm the one that's going to talk about Jesus, because that's his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But I go back. Chris and I watched a show that was great because Chris can read the Bible and Course in Miracles. My brain doesn't compute the language. Sometimes I think I'm just dumber than he is on that level mentally. So we watched.
It's just my station.
I know.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's just my station.
But I also sometimes feel kind of dumb. Let's be honest. So we watched what felt like a kid's show to me on some levels, which wasn't a kid's show at all, called The Chosen, which was sort of like a walk through the Bible at a specific period in time. And what I got from that really applies here, which is that whether you believe that Jesus existed or he didn't, or he's just a metaphor or whatever, doesn't really matter. What I watched in that process was somebody coming to invite people into a place where they could know truth, not by going to synagogue or church or the mosque or anywhere else, but they could know it inside of themselves if they got quiet enough to listen. And what happened to him? Well, he moved a lot of people. He inspired a lot of people. He healed a lot of people. And then he was crucified for it because he challenged the status quo. He challenged the belief that the powers that be wanted everyone to believe in, which was that power existed outside of themselves. Because as long as power exists outside of ourselves, we can very easily be controlled. Our thinking mind can be controlled so easily. Our emotional bodies can be controlled by our thinking mind. But if we actually turned inside, then we would be able to recognize that what was happening, let's just say on social media, in the news, all over the place, we would be trained to be able to say, does that align for me? Does that, I might not even need to know what it's all about. I don't need to mentally have done the gymnastics through history to know whether what's happening in some part of the world is true or not. What I need to do is tune into whether or not it feels accurate. And if it does, then I can go with it. And if it doesn't, then I can turn off that radio station and tune into something inside. Our teachers, when they spoke about the Aquarian age, spoke very much about how we were ending the age of Pisces, which was an information age, where all of this information was all of a sudden accessible to us. I don't know about you guys, but do you remember having like World Book Encyclopedia or the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is where we'd go for information when we needed to know about something?
Or a single source, basically.
Right.
Right.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
Now we can access everything about everything. And that becomes quite dangerous because what do we believe in? Well, what we believe in, the only way to actually trust what's coming at us is to assess what feels right. And that's what he was trying to teach. Trust yourself. Go inside, listen, because if you listen, you will have access to truth.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, as someone who I spend a lot of time paying attention to like those metaphysical messages from Jesus and from the Course of Miracles and from the Bible. But my first journey into spirituality was definitely through Eastern spiritual systems, which this is what fascinated me so much about the message of Christianity, is that it's hard at saying the same things as the Eastern religion. It's saying you have access as this thing called universal consciousness or God or whatever word you want to put on it. You don't need to go through any authority to access it. You access it through going inside. And the Sikhs have their practices, the Hindus have their practices, the Buddhists have their practices, and the Christian spiritual systems have their practices. But it's all the same thing. These are all methods and modalities to tap into our intuition or universal consciousness or Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's all the same stuff. It's leading you to the same place. And when you find that, again, it's nirvana, it's heaven on earth, it's whatever word you want to attach to it.
It's peace.
It's peace. And I think you said it beautifully. It's like, intuition becomes so useful in our life today because then life becomes convenient. And when, you tune into this thing, my intuition says that's not true. It doesn't mean go and fight that thing. It means turn that thing off and stop listening to it. It's not your music station. If this one's not true, turn that one off. It's about finding what's the path, what's the flow, what's the music I want to listen to, not fighting everything and anything. That's the path of peace. And our intuition, your intuition will take you there once you start really learning how to attune to it and listen to it. It's all available for everybody on earth.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways, and this might sound kind of fluffy, but that's okay. I think it's actually the polar opposite of fluffy, is to ask yourself the question, what does your soul say? It's not going to respond from your place of wounding. It's not going to respond from your limiting beliefs and your stories. It's going to very quickly give you a hit. And if you take the time to just sit with it, it will show you what you need to do. The challenge is that in doing that, you actually are invited to face the very things that you've been avoiding your whole life, which is the wounded parts of you are going to actually come forward to be cleared. But they're going to come forward. And we're scared of that. We're scared to have to face the belief. I'll just give you an example. I was just sitting with somebody today. She's actually a dear, dear friend, and in the place of struggle. And I asked her the question, what does your soul say? And first it was, my soul says to fight. And I asked more and more. And then I said, what does your soul say? And she said, my soul says to continue to do this work that I love with children. And I said, how much fight comes into that work? And she said, none. And all of a sudden, what comes up is, well, what's in the way of you continuing that work? My belief that I can. So my self-worth, right? In order to follow the intuition's voice, we will inherently be brought to task, which means we will have to face the places inside of ourselves that make us smaller than we are. Because the voice of intuition is not confined to our experience in this lifetime.
It transcends it.
Yeah. And in order to listen, we also will transcend it, which then brings us to that place of nirvana or bliss, which ultimately is actually a sense of peace and ease and flow and calm. And all of us want that, right? But sometimes we need to walk through the fire to do it. The beauty of following our intuition in that space, though, is that as little suffering as possible happens along the way when you do. It's almost like it invites you into a place of ease as you move through it. So the ego will take you and put you in a place where you're swimming upriver like a salmon. The intuition will take you through the same stuff, but you'll be sitting on an inner tube floating down the river because you've said yes and you surrender.
Yeah, I mean, your intuition or your soul or it doesn't know fear. Fear is an ego-based mechanism, and your ego's, taken those things that happened to you and hid them from you because it didn't think you could handle it, didn't think you could survive it. Your intuition knows you can survive anything, and so it's going to guide you. You're going to have to go through those fears and face those fears as you foster your intuition. And just as we close, something we haven't touched on, but maybe just worth mentioning is if someone really wants to begin attuning their tuition just this week, I guess I'm going to just watch your thoughts. And when the thoughts come up, just recognize, where have these come from? Are they my fear-based ego, or are they my intuition? And just see where that takes you for doing it for a week. Spend 10 minutes a day just watching your thoughts and observing them and see where that takes you. I bet it'll be enlightening.
It's been a pleasure, you guys. We will see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, see you later. You've been listening to me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, on Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living.
Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and the masculine, you will learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow, and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
For more information or to connect with us personally, visit theway-healing.com. That's theway-healing.com.